So this week I continue answering your question. And if you have any questions that you'd like me to address or concept that you'd like me to cover, simply contact me. It will be my pleasure. So this week we answered Danielle's question, he says, Sara, can you talk about how to build deep, long-lasting relationships that come prior to conflicts? It's interesting because in business, we're talking a lot about, it's no longer B2B, B2C, it's now H2H, human to human, which is true. And at the same time, it's just a concept. Nobody really understands. Like, it's this fancy sentence, marketing sentence that people throw around without really understanding what it means. But building long-lasting, deep relationships, let it be with your team, let it be with your clients, let it be with strategic alliances, is at the heart of that. Now, one thing that we want to shed light is, the first thing is we build relationships on our values. So we associate with people for our values. We dissociate with people because of values. The funny thing, interesting thing is we often don't know what our values are. What's important for us? What's important to us? And when I do this exercise with clients, there's often a misconception between values and needs. A need is something that I need that I do not feel safe or at ease if it's not there. As opposed to a value is it's just the way that I am. I'm like that. So if I give you a really concrete example, respect is one that I have a lot of people who come up and say, well, respect for me is a value, that we respect each other. And 95%, 98% of the time, respect is not a value, it's a need. If I don't feel respected, then, this is not working. And the thing with the need is that it cannot be fulfilled from outside. It needs to be fulfilled from inside. There will never be enough of whatever people do to bring me respect. I need to figure out how to fill that void. So shed light. What are your values? What are your needs? And what are your principles? Principles are in the doing. Sometimes I'll hear professionalism is a value. Professionalism is not a value. It's a principle. Punctuality is not a value, it's a principle. So let's put the right thing in the right bucket so we can gain clarity. Because we often say, and now it's very trendy, I want to live in alignment. I want to live in integrity. But integrity only follows clarity. Do you have clarity? What are your values? What are your needs that you're trying to get filled from the outside world and it's not inside? And then what are the principles? Second is those values. Value is just a concept. It's an abstract concept that really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything. So I have a definition of a concept, and you have a different definition of a concept. So generosity, my definition, and your definition is different, guaranteed. We want to clarify what are the concrete actions that embody, that demonstrate this value. So this way, with somebody on my team, for example, I can sit down and say, this value is important for me. This is why it's important for me. And for me, this is how we show this value. Then we're playing on the same playing field. Then we're playing the same game because we know the rules of the game. So I might say, caring is a value for me. But for you, caring might be a value, but your definition of it is somebody asks me a question, I give an answer. I'm efficient. For me, is taking time. I don't care about efficiency. I care about you. So you see how this concept of caring and the way we actually go about it on a day-to-day basis doesn't show up the same way. And this is where we get conflicts, because I have my perception of something and you have your perception of something. We're supposedly associated for values, but now apparently we don't have the same value because we don't have the same definition of the value. So we are going to start to dissociate in our relationship. So are you clear on what your values are? Are you clear on what your needs are? Are you clear on what is your definition? How do these values show up in the doing, in the real world? How do you show this value? Clarity, such an important aspect, but sometimes we just say, I don't have the time. But taking the time to take the time is not wasting time. A complete opposite. So first, values is such an important one. Second is the level of conversations that we have. We tend to live in the first degree of conversation, very mental conversation, no depth, no real rooting in our conversation. And the more shallow a conversation is, so the more external focus a conversation is, the weaker the relationship is. So if I am talking with people on my team about things to do, projects that we have, hey, how did your weekend go? These are shallow conversations. They don't bring depth in our relationships. But the deeper we go in our conversation, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your fears? Tell me a story about. The deeper we go, the deeper we go. But it takes courage to go there. I often give the example, a couple who argues because the toilet seat is always let up. The argument has nothing to do with the toilet seat. Maybe I'm tired of that you leave the toilet seat up because it makes me feel like you don't care about me. It makes me feel that, you always expect that I'm going to pick up after you. And the real thing behind that is, do I have boundaries? Do I respect myself? Do I care for myself, or do I care more for others? So you see, we're arguing about the toilet seat, but it actually has nothing to do with the toilet seat. It has all to do with me first. That is reflecting in our relationship. But since we don't want to talk about that, we'll talk about the toilet seat. And we do this everywhere. Somebody on my team doesn't respond or doesn't ask what I do, then I make up this story, this perception. Hold on. Is it really true? And I'm like, yeah, but she never does what she says to do, or she often doesn't. And it's usually like always never. She never does what I ask her to do, what I ask him to do. And my question is like, do you keep your word for yourself? Is your word law you or you? And often it is not. So our role as a leader is to not get trapped into this mental conversation about the toilet seat, because it doesn't matter. It's never about the action. It's always what's behind the action. That's where the conversation is. So our role is to stop the conversation, stop the madness, pause, and ask, okay, what's really going on? Give the compassion you pray for. Give the time. Allow this space to go at that second level of conversation. Because I can tell you, when somebody shares with you their hopes, their dreams, their fears, there's what they're scared of, like, that person's not going anywhere. Because we're in the deep end together. And when we actually have somewhere where it actually, it just doesn't, something just, doesn't go right, we can talk about the real thing and not this fake thing. And conflict is pretty much always on a fake thing. It's all about the toilet seat, when it's never about the toilet seat. So can we have the courage to go there, step back from the mental conversation and really go deep in there? And you'll see we won't have conflicts, or we will have less conflicts, because we're going to be talking about the real thing. So, okay, you know what? When you do this, I feel like that. Or when that happened, that's how I feel. Or when this happens, that reminds me of, okay. Then we can talk about the same thing. And we transfer conflicts as to deeper, much, much deeper conversation. And to add to that, I'd like to, I know I talked about it in the past. There's a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation. And basically, we all have a channel that we use to communicate appreciation, communicate love, So it could be words of affirmation, it could be time, it could be service, it could be gift, it could be touch. So there's different ways. As I was going to say a leader, but really as a human, learn your way. Because conflict is always a mismatch, is all about a mismatch. We don't have the same definition of the value. We are not talking about the right thing. You are not communicating this the right way. So I give it a perception. So understanding our language of appreciation and learning the language of appreciation of the people around us. For me, it's just a fundamental sign to show that we care. That's it. So I'll make sure I put the link to that book, which is a very highly recommended book for, I was going to say leaders, but every human who is in interaction with another human. So Danielle, I hope this answers your question. I know you're already a very human, because I know you're very human focused. These are additional insight tools that we can all use to bring deeper relationship, have meaningful conversation, and really have the impact that we want to have. So if you have a question or a topic that you would like me to address, make sure you write to me, and it will be my pleasure. These episodes, we do them for you. On that note, have deeper conversation, have real conversation. Get out of here, come into here, because this is where it all happens. Have fun. And as usual, thank you for being here week after week, and I will see you next Tuesday.